Well, dear folks, over yonder on Thursday, the good folks at CNN done aired a right harrowing audio clip, telling us all about them intimidation and threats what an ever-growing bunch of Republican lawmakers are claiming to face. Seems they're all riled up over this here Representative Jim Jordan from Ohio and his bid for the speakership. It's a downright ugly business, I tell ya. This caller feller, he done left a message for some unnamed lawmaker's wife, and while he kept on saying he ain't talking 'bout violence, he did threaten to hound that woman something fierce in public. He says her husband best vote for Jim Jordan or some even more conservative feller, else she's in for a heap of trouble, the kind you can't rightly imagine. Now, the big story goin' around is that these threats, old Jordan, he's disavowed but some folks, they're blaming him. But it seems them threats didn't quite work out like they'd hoped. Jordan done lost a third vote on Friday, and the GOP conference finally come to their senses and voted against him as their speaker designate. And mind you, this ain't just old-timers on the way out the door talking 'bout threats, no siree. We're hearin' it from them lawmakers with their careers still kickin'. I reckon this here's a big moment, with all these folks comin' together to denounce them threats. It's 'bout time we had us a good, long talk 'bout what's goin' on. But in all this chatter, we ought to remember that these threats and intimidations, they can actually work, and they probably have, I tell ya. More than 20 lawmakers, they stood tall against them alleged intimidations and kept on voting against Jordan. Representative Dawn Bacon from Nebraska, his wife, she felt so uneasy, she took to sleepin' with a loaded gun. Then there's Representative Drew Ferguson from Georgia, he said the bullying made him change his vote against Jordan, and he ain't turnin' back. Others, they're sayin' they won't give in to threats, claimin' that they're taking a principled stand against the intimidations. But let me tell ya, there's them lawmakers who swore they wouldn't vote for Jordan, but they done gone and did it anyway. Most of them 55 Republicans who whispered their opposition in private, they eventually went and voted for Jordan. Some of them had their office phone numbers plastered all over them social media sites, right after they showed their opposition, and before they flipped. Now, it's hard to say whether they done it 'cause they was scared or if they was anticipatin', or maybe they just wanted to stand united with their party, or got some promises from Jordan. But here's the trouble with these threats and intimidations, the real impact, it ain't often spoken of. Nobody wants to admit they gave in, and they sure don't want to rile up them folks who are already willin' to threaten. Until folks start speaking up, well, we'll never rightly know the truth. But I'll tell ya, we've seen Republicans claimin' that these things, they done had a real impact on them votes. And, to hear certain Republicans tell it, they might have played a big role in steerin' the Republican Party's course in recent years. You see, the whole effort to overturn that election, it done failed in the end, but don't go thinkin' of them lawmakers didn't matter none. What happened on January 6th, it showed us that Trump, he was tryin' to make his case and stir up some legitimacy, even if the evidence don't rightly support him. Now, them Republicans, they didn't echo Trump's wild claims about election fraud, but they did put forth a watered-down version of it to back him up. They made it seem like a serious business, and folks got all fired up. To this day, about 7 in 10 Republicans, they still think that 2020 election was no good, and that's a real mess for our democracy. I reckon it's fair to say that the fear them Republicans were talking 'bout led to back Trump's efforts, and it's still causing trouble in our politics. Now, let's talk about impeachment. There's a notion that intimidations might have saved Trump from being convicted. Never before had so many of a president's party voted to impeach and toss him out. They came up just 10 votes short in the Senate, and a heap of them Republicans, they said they voted to acquit on account of a technicality, 'cause Trump weren't president no more, not 'cause they thought he was innocent. With all we've seen this week and what them Republicans been sayin', it ain't foolish to think fear might have swayed more senators. We'll never truly know if the absence of that fear might have changed the outcome. Members, they sure feared for their careers, and some might have honestly believed Trump's actions weren't worth convicting him over. But let me tell ya, we weren't far from a place where Trump could have been convicted and barred from another run for president. This week, it ought to make them Republicans do some soul searchin' and ponder on how they've let this mess fester and made folks ask these kind of questions.